and proof it
What
so that it's
is
really
going
reliable.
on, guys? You can see Kayl is just talking on the
our
Instagram channel. So
it's really weird.
It's really strange. We're getting like stereo sound and it sounds really funny. But if you want to see what we're doing on our Instagram channel, because we do a little like preview thing on IG, check us out at McCann Dogs. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about a really important step in your dog training. It's something that it's so common for a student to say something like, oh, but my dog does it great at home. It just doesn't seem to work when I'm out at the park or when I'm, out in the real world. And that's not uncommon. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the most important training skill and why dog training won't work without this step. And that step is proofing. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can proof a few different exercises. Things like, what have we got on the list today? We have response to name, walking on leash, stay, and the recall, and how you can really proof those exercises. And it's such an important part of dog training. Let's see what I've got. Oh, I see lots of people are jumped on. SD Cruiser, Dan the Man is here. Melissa Coolin, Painted Spring System. All kinds of people are joining us here. I can see already. And welcome to the channel. In today's video, Kayl's just finishing up the. I think she's trying to finish up Instagram Live.
I did it.
I did it. Okay, so. I was just talking about the importance of proofing and how common it is for people to say something like, oh, but my dog does it great at home. Why won't they do it here? And we're going to talk tonight about that exact reason.
Mind, because I literally had this conversation with some students today about like how their dog is one person was saying their dog was really good in class and then not so good at home, and another person was like, my dog's great at home but not so good in class. And so we had a great discussion about why that happens and then how to address it. Then I realized that we were talking about this tonight in a live stream, and I thought, this is perfect.
It seems just so darn appropriate.
It does.
In saying that, tonight we're going to talk about proofing and why this important step is crucial to your dog training. Otherwise, your dog training just won't work in the real world. I'm Ken Steepe.
I'm Kayl McCann.
Welcome back to McCann Dogs. Oh, this is such a popular thing that we talk about in classes. And Kayl mentioned, this is something that we talk about with our students quite often. And it's just so often overlooked. I think maybe people have a sense that their dogs maybe generalize better or, have a more thorough understanding than their dog really does.
I don't think people realize how situational dogs are in their learning.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to remember. Now, if this is your first time here with us, at McCann Dogs, I'm Ken Steepe. This is Kayl McCann. Now, we are from McCann Professional Dog Trainers, where every single week we get to help more than 500 dog owners to overcome the same dog training challenges that you have. So that's sort of what we do. And if you've been on the channel before, you'll know that we love to share great dog training tips like these. I was talking with someone just a moment ago, a couple of minutes ago, about how this channel is all of the tips and all of the things I wish I knew before I became a dog trainer. So if this is your first time here, make sure you knock that subscribe button out. Make sure you do that.
Melissa.
Now, if you are a train station regular, you'll know that we couldn't do this without our amazing moderators. SD Cruiser, who you often see in the chat, who's making fun of me saying, SD Cruiser said...
I know, Ken thinks he's so cool. What's up with the IG?
He's on the IG. The problem is that I don't use it enough to know what the real lingo is.
I have to help him use Instagram all the time.
But our other moderator, who you'll often see in the chat, who will be dropping links and really helping us out, is Dan the Man. Now, something we love to do here in the train station is go live to Dan. It took me months to set up our McCann Dogs satellite feed so that we could bring you live to wherever Dan is. So I hope you appreciate this. But let's see. I'm just going to click the bleep bloops and make sure we're connected and see what Dan is up to. Oh, there he is.
Look at that handsome
Dan,
haircut.
the Man, and his dog Lucy, who you may also recognize from some of the shows. So you might see him in the chat. We have a couple of things that and I'm not sure if the bots are working, but there's a couple opportunities for you guys to get some free information. A couple things that are super, super helpful. Number one, if you type ! free workshop, right now we have a monthly, call it a mystery box workshop for all of your dog training needs. And we do like trick training, skills training, like fun stuff that you want to do with your dog. This is like, people...
Training inspiration, ideas, challenges.
For sure. The buzzword word, and it's been a buzzword for a couple of years now, is enrichment. And so often enrichment means like your dog doing something on their own. Well, we don't like that idea. That isn't a good way to teach your dog that you're worth listening to teach your dog that, they need to respond when you ask them to do something. So in the, Dan dropped the link, free workshop. Great.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan.
In our free workshop is exactly the kinds of things that you can do with your dog. It's delivered over 3 days. Our director of online training, Shannon Viljasu, is the one who puts on those free workshops. And I was so excited when I saw this one for this month because I knew how helpful it would be.
Is it still a mystery, or is the cat out of the bag?
No, the cat is out of the bag, so to speak.
That's a terrible saying, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. It's a funny thing to say.
I'm a dog lover, but I still don't think cats should go in bags.
No. Something else I love to do here, because again, it took me so darn long to get this all set up, is to do a roll call. I would love to know where you guys are joining us from. Look at me just rolling along.
I would love to see you ride in an actual train like that one day.
Yeah, I'm so happy. Look at how happy I look in that thing.
It looks like it was your calling.
I know. Well, who's to say, really? So let's talk a little bit about the proofing and some of the skills, why it's important, why people's dogs might have one response in a certain location and why it might be completely different in another location.
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but dogs are really situational learners, and that's really, there's lots of things that separate them from human and a way a human learns, but situational learning is really, really important to know. So basically what that means is that if you train your dog to do something, teach your dog to do something in one area, for example, say you mainly practice like in your kitchen or in your backyard, and then you progress, through 3, 4, 5 steps in your training, and then you take the same dog and you take the same exercise and the same progression and you switch locations. Say you go to the cottage, or you go to dog class, or you go to the park, and you expect your dog to just pick up in that new spot on the last progression that you were able to accomplish in your backyard. Very rarely will you get the same results from your dog. It just doesn't work like that. Dogs need reminders, and they constantly are checking the rules and trying to figure things out. So just because they believe something to work in one location doesn't necessarily mean it's going to transfer over to another location. So that's why we've learned that you can do lots of training in one location. So at your house, or, for prime example is at our dog training school. In order for the dogs that come to our dog training school to learn to go home and listen with their families, we do all kinds of proofing exercises with distractions, with distance, with all kinds of things to proof reliability, so that the chances of that dog taking that behavior and going to a new place, home or wherever, the dog's more likely to do those things. And of course it teaches the human. I love how we call them humans, because anyways, it's just weird. People think it's weird that I say humans, but I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
People, owners, maybe owners would be more normal.
Yeah, I don't know. People may feel weird about that.
We're human.
I don't know. Whatever.
Anyways, we teach the humans how to react if the dog doesn't, do something correct in a moment, or what to do if they do things correct in a moment, so that their training can happen all of the time. And that's really what's the most ideal for your dog.
So there's so many people on here letting us know where they're all over the world. Very, very cool. But I want to say hello to Charles Arnett, back from Arlington, Texas.
Nice.
I see Chicago, Australia, Boise, Arkansas. I got to go to the next page because you guys are typing so quickly. Nova Scotia, New Jersey, Illinois, Colorado, North Carolina. Melissa joining us from good old New Credit Reserve.
Hey.
Mary says, I'm from Clevelandia. Janique is back from Fredericton, New Brunswick, Rhode Island. Susan's joining us she's in Gainesville, Florida, but she's from Perth, Australia.
Oh, cool.
Manitowoc, Wisconsin, Halifax, Arkansas, Texas, Massachusetts, and it goes on and on. I appreciate you guys dropping all that in the chat.
This is a really nice comment.
Yeah, I posted it. Yeah, thank Navina. That's a nice thing to say. And it's so true. Love your teaching. It's not easy what you're doing. But for the dog's well-being, they need it.
It's all for the dogs, guys.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a video right now where I talk about what my decision-making before I was a dog trainer. And I think you guys will really appreciate it. It's a pretty candid look at the end of the average dog owner, I think. You know, it's so easy for me now, knowing what I know about dogs and having seen thousands of dogs, personally helped thousands of dog owners. You know, it's a very different perspective, and sometimes it's hard to forget that. You know, or hard to remember that. Sometimes it's hard to like put myself in the shoes of someone who doesn't know, and that's something that we work really hard on is teaching you. So the idea of proofing, when we're giving you these skills, whether you're a train station passenger or you're one of our students, giving you the skills so that you can take them out of the classroom, so that you can go practice. SD Cruiser is a great example. I see he posts lots of great pictures with his dogs, you know, taking your skills out and about, you know, practicing this so that your dog has a more thorough understanding is part of the proofing process. Now, 3 of the really important elements of challenges that I want you to think about throughout your proofing are the 3 Ds: distance, distraction, and duration. Those are the 3 things.
D.
Yeah, those are the 3 things that you're going to modify. Those are the things that you're going to add a little distance, take away some distance, add some distraction, remove some distraction, one at a time, so that you're not overfacing your dog with challenges.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say that. It's really important that when you're dealing with the 3Ds, that you don't change all 3 elements at the same time, because that can be a little bit overwhelming. The McCann method of dog training, we believe that you should try to train the dog to do things successfully first, so that the dog really has a true understanding, so that it can be done through a lot of positive reinforcement. And then once the dog has a sense of how to do something, then we would go into the proofing phase. So we have like the teaching phase, the proofing phase, and then the testing phase. And it's important that when you are going into the proofing phase, where you're starting to do things like add distance and, you know, distractions and all of those different things, that you don't overface the dog, because sometimes it can cause the dog to start making a lot of errors. And that's not really very motivating for the dog. And it's also not motivating for you too. It can be frustrating if your dog's making a lot of mistakes. So it is important that you break it down and do things individually. And we'll show you how to do that tonight.
For sure. Now, I've seen a couple of people jump in. We've got some really good, I'm going to test one of these things out. Let's start talking maybe about, we're going to talk about these 4 skills: response to name, walking on leash, stays, and recall specifically. And then you can take some of what you learned tonight and apply it to other skills that you might be working on. But those are the 4 that we're going to really drill down on and help you be more successful. Certainly the recall. That's the thing most people come to us for, to have a reliable recall.
I'm just going to answer this question really quick, just because it's so on topic. How do you know when to back off and not overwhelm them? Julia Short asked that.
Good question,
I really like that question, and I wanted to make sure we said it now, just because I was literally just talking about it. So how do we know when to back off and not overwhelm them? That is a really good question, and it's a little bit difficult to answer in a way, because you have to read your dog. You have to be able to read your dog, and a good way to assess is number 1, what's the reliability like? So when's the last time that they really struggled with something? And I can use response to name, since that's going to be the first one that we talk about. I can use that as an example. When I can't remember the last time that my dog struggled to respond to her name when I had some food there and the leash there, she was really reliable, then I might say to myself, okay, I'm ready to make a progression. Like maybe I drop her leash when I'm practicing, or maybe instead of having the treats in my hand, which is really a bribe, maybe I practice the same exercise, but I put the treats in my pocket. I make it less visible. Can she still listen to me? And then you need to read the dog, because if you start to make things more challenging and things start to go south, you need to have the ability to assess that and then regroup and go back to a progression or a level that you were successful at. And what I find in my experience with training my own dogs and students' dogs is that typically if you have to go back, you then kind of get to go forward much more quickly than you did the very first time that you started, because you got a baseline there. You have foundation. You've laid down some basic understanding for the dog. So if you push forward and you have to go back, that's no problem. But typically you can catapult ahead very quickly without a lot of issue.
Now, I see a great comment in here, and Leslie mentions that proofing is the same when teaching a skill to kids with autism. To consider a skill mastered, it has to be correct 3 times in 3 separate sessions with 3 different tutors.
Love love that.
Yeah,
Love that.
I think it's a good rule of thumb. Now, we're always careful to put definitive numbers on teaching a dog because
dogs are so different. And I'm sure
they're very different than human, for sure.
Are different as well.
Yeah.
But I think it is really important to learn to assess the dog. You know, a dog that might be a little bit worried or maybe lacks confidence or maybe is really bashful or maybe just super unmotivated and sort of slow moving, I would address and teach that dog very different than like a really high power, boisterous, outgoing, maybe a bit rammy type of dog. I would, address those two types of dogs very differently. And there are some dogs that are just they sort of ease into things, and then, people get relaxed, and then the dog hits like 16, 17 months and the dog's like, I'm an adolescent now and I don't have to listen. Right. And there's other people that just deal with that when the puppies are young and they're just so bratty, they overcome it, and then it's like smooth sailing. So everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different. And we're really big believers in that, there isn't one way to train a dog. There's certainly great methods to follow.
So important.
But you have to be able to think outside the box to be able to communicate and connect with all dogs. And in our experience, because we're professional dog trainers, our job is actually to teach you to train your dog. So we need to figure out what you need from us in order to communicate with your dog more easily as well.
Yeah, that's something that you learn over time. There's actually a name for there's a learning. There's an inflected graph of learning, and it's something that because we're so lucky we get to see so many dogs every week, every year that we are teaching, that you really do learn that. Truly, every dog is different. And I hate making like hard and fast, you must do this thing with a dog statements, because everybody's a little bit different. But best practices for sure apply overall. And then it's some of the nuances that will make you more successful with your own dog. And that's why we try to cover lots of different topics on the channel, even though there's lots of times where we publish a video that I know is not going to do well. For like the 4,000 people that connect with that video, it is changing their day. So
and there's also things like people think, well, I'm going to train a husky different than I'm going to train this breed. And, there is some truth to that. But then we've also met I've probably helped train well over 100 huskies in my time. I wouldn't even be able to put a number on it. And they're all different. You have to do slightly different things. So it's important to keep an open mind.
Yep, totally. Okay, let's talk about some proofing. And the first thing that we're going to talk about, response to name. Now, this is something people overuse. They use their dog's name a lot. And they might say, oh, my dog used to be great about responding to his name, listening to his name. And then things fall apart for them. And it's all about the proofing. It's all about reinforcement, and it's all about helping them to be right. When we're talking about your dog training that you do, wherever it is, taking that into the real world. Let's go through a few of the steps when we're talking about proofing a response to name.
Yeah, and just what you said reminded me of that question that that Julia Short had asked earlier about when to move on. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about. So, people will teach a behavior and then they sort of say, okay, be free, dog, and then they just expect it to work, and that's just not how it goes.
Totally.
Okay, what did you ask me?
Talking about let's jump into response to name. Okay. Let's talk about the steps and how we'd proof it, and we can even show some.
Proof it or teach it.
We'll talk about foundations.
Okay.
We'll just talk about the foundations, then we can show how we might proof the skill. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Okay. It was mid. I guess I'm not supposed to say what I'm drinking because Dan had some.
What are you drinking? I didn't know it.
I am drinking steeped tea in my mixed steep mug.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Okay. For response to name, initially what we would do is play a little word association. So we would have the puppy with us or dog with us, and we would have the dog on leash, and we would have a very highly motivated reward that we would be using. We would just do a bit of word association. So we would say the puppy's name, and then we would feed them. And what we do when we do this, though, is a little bit different than most people. We actually train this initially without the dog being distracted. So the dog, before we begin, we get complete engagement from the dog.
Right.
So we show them the food, we get them connected. In some cases, we would start this in a really mild, distracting area, and then we would say name, and then we'd feed, name, feed, name, feed, name, feed. We would keep doing that until the dog starts really thinking, gosh, this whole name stuff is really, 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 really helpful. Then the second foundation exercise that we would do is we would allow the puppy to get a little bit distracted, but we would only let them go as far away as like the length of our arm so that we could help them if we need to. Then we would say their name, and then without, again, testing, there's no testing in this phase whatsoever, we would show them some food, and then we would lure them towards you. Do you want me to show this stuff?
Yeah, why not?
Or do you want me to just explain this foundation and then show the proofing?
Well, let's just show the proofing. So because I mean we have a couple of videos, and Dan the Man or SD Cruiser, somebody can drop a link maybe to our response to name video, and that'll give you a much more thorough demonstration and explanation. But I want to focus on the proofing today. I want you to come away from this and be able to learn a new skill and really have an understanding how you can apply it to the real world so that you can be successful, so that you help your dog, keep your dog from making bad choices and failing, because it's so important. ST Cruiser mentions, and this is in regard to response to name, he says, a really bad habit of yelling my dog's name when they're doing something wrong. It comes out of my mouth before I can even stop it. Absolutely. You know, that'll happen. And if you have multiple dogs, sometimes that's maybe, more natural than with other people, but oftentimes, and it depends on the sensitivity of your other dog, but oftentimes that sharp moment, that or hey, or that something, that verbal reprimand, negative verbal reprimand will mark that moment for the dog, so that they're like, oh, this is the thing, specifically the thing that he didn't like. Now, with no further ado, you guys know, if you've been here in the train station before, you know that I love to toot. And this is the train station whistle, the wooden train whistle. Let's get some light on Kayl back there. Did that light come on? No, it's not coming on. Okay, I'm going to have to get you some more light. But just turn it off and on. Or it actually might be off. I might have turned it off. There you go. Okay, now we've got some light on Kayl. But you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I get to toot. I've been waiting all night for this. Let's head on over to the train station.
Okay, I decided to use our little toy poodle hippie shake here so that you can see. She is super, super excited right now. You're so cute. So I'm just going to quickly show you some of the proofing that we will do. So if I'm working on my response to name, what I like to do is practice purposely getting her distracted so that I can practice responding to her, practice calling her so that she will respond. Excuse me. When you enter this phase, though, you need to be ready for if the dog does not respond, because when we start to add distractions or we start to proof, now the dog could be right, but now they could be wrong. And so if the dog is right, we have a very high rate of reinforcement. I would use the word yes to mark the correct behavior, and then I would reward her with something that she finds very valuable. If she does not respond to me, though, I need now to follow through, and I need to teach her she's got to respond each and every time I give her a command. I'm never going to be mad about it. I'm simply going to be calm, and I'm going to follow through. Now, one of the ways that we'll proof and sort of redirect a dog on response to name is either giving them a little touch on their body or giving them a little pop on the leash to get their attention, especially if they're at a distance and they're distracted. But I'm going to show you a little fun little proofing exercise that we do. So I'm going to have a couple pieces of food in my hand here, and I'm actually going to show it to Hippie. Okay, babe. And I'm just going to tell her, go get it. And I'm going to throw it just a few feet away, and I'm going to let her grab it. And then I'm going to call her name as soon as I see her eat the treat. And I expect her to turn immediately and come back for the rewards that I'll have ready and waiting for her if she is a good girl. So I'm going to show her the food. Okay, get it. Hippie. Yes, good girl. Get it. Hippie. Yes, good girl. Oops, freebie. Hold on, I got to get another one. You stole it. Come here. Get it. Get it. Hippie. Yes, good girl. So this is a really easy exercise that forces my dog to get distracted, but in a really calm manner. Now, I want to point out a couple really important points when you're practicing this. I have the leash attached to Hippie's collar here, but never at any time am I making her do it if she's being a good girl. So I would be very careful that I'm going to do it wrong now so you can see that I wouldn't want to do this. Get it. Okay, get it. Hippie. Okay, see, I pull her towards me on a tight leash. So many people do that. Now, Hippie didn't really do any of the work. She's coming because I'm pulling her towards me. My goal is that I want to be able to have so much reliability in this exercise that if I was to drop the leash, I should be able to get the exact same behavior from my dog. Get it. Okay, get it. Okay, get it. Hippie. Yes, good girlie. So she should turn and she should respond back to her name once again. Good girl. Now, if I want to make it a little bit more challenging, I could try calling her before she gets the food and see if she'll turn, so that I may have to use a little reminder correction. Now, again, I play these games with her all the time, so I don't know if she's going to do it wrong. Maybe, Ken, you could be my wrong dog in a minute. Yeah. So I'm going to throw the food away. Okay? I'm going to let her go towards it. Okay. 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 Hippie. Yes! Oh, I'm going to give you a little jackpot for that one. Who is the smartest poodle in the room? Okay, get it. Okay, get it. Seriously. Okay, get it. Yes. So she's trying to be so good here, making sure that she's not going towards the distraction unless I tell her. One of the reasons why she's doing that is we have worked a lot on a command, leave it, and Dan probably can drop a link on that. And that was instrumental in helping this dog to avoid distractions. She's so small to the ground. She's so low to the ground that those distractions are like just a few inches away from her nose. So I had to work a lot on teaching her to leave it. Okay, I'm just going to remove her leash here.
Now, I think this is the perfect time to point out, a lot of times we'll see, I'll see comments on the channel that say, oh, of course that works because there's, you're in like a non-distracting environment. People will say things like, oh, you're in a big empty hall. That's the point, and I love that people are identifying that, and that's the thing I want you to think about. When we're talking about foundational training, when we're talking about teaching our dog to be reliable, we need to minimize some of these distractions. Hi, cutie pie. Minimize some of these distractions so that your dog is going to be successful, and that's how proofing works. They're gonna understand the skill, and then you're gonna make it a little bit harder. So begin in a scenario environment in your home or somewhere that's not too distracting. Now let's see what happens when it goes wrong.
Yeah, and then just in addition to that, try not to practice in your house like this where there's no distractions, and then like go to the park all of a sudden where there's like kids and dogs everywhere.
Would be
too difficult.
But maybe you can find a spot in the park. Maybe you're in the back corner of the park where none of the kids are. Maybe that's a reasonable place. Now, sort of the way to know if it's too much for your dog is if they're failing a couple of times in a row. Your dog makes 2 mistakes. That third time, you better be ready to help them to be right, to make sure that you're not rehearsing a bad behavior.
So I'm just going to show you a couple scenarios where my dog Ken is not as responsive to his name as he needs to be.
And I'm very fleet-footed tonight with my dog training
and
moccasins.
I'm wearing pink slippers with pineapples on them
how nice.
that I got for Hawaii. Anyways, on that note, so Ken's going to be my dog. He's going to be distracted. So what I would do is I would have the leash. Now, if I'm working close enough to my dog Ken that I could reach out and touch him, one of the attention getters that I could use on this exercise would be a little bit of a touch on the body. Now, when you do this, timing is very important. Hippie is wondering why on earth she is not the demonstration dog. Can you sit for a sec? Sit. Good girl. Just wait there for a second. Wait. You're so cute. I can't even handle it.
Can you guys hear her ears are flipped back?
Wait. So if I called Ken and I didn't get a response because my dog's not listening, I would then repeat his name, Ken. Yay, good boy. And then we would back away and we would party and have a lot of fun. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that it's very important that you don't continue to call. Yes, that's a very good girl. You don't continue to call your dog's name over and over again. This is very common that people do. Ken. Ken, Ken, Ken. And they keep calling and trying to get louder and trying to get more responsive. But all this does, Ken can hear me. He can hear just fine. He's deliberately choosing to ignore me. And when I call him and call him and call him, he basically says, oh, she's just going to keep calling me and I'm going to keep sniffing that thing and not paying attention. So I need to do something that's going to get his attention. I need, however, to have good timing. So if I'm going to say his name and I'm going to use an attention getter like touching him, I need to make sure that I give him fair warning. So whenever we're training, if we're going to use any type of correction or redirection with our dog or helpful aid, anything, we always say the command before we do that helpful aid. So I would say, Ken. Then I would use my touch and then back away. If it was a dog, I might give him a little pinch of the bum or something that was a little bit more exciting. Now, once my dog
this became an 18+ screen.
I know, because I'm grabbing his butt. Now, if I was working a little bit further away from my dog now and I couldn't reach him, now what I could do is I could make the same feeling happen, but with using my leash. And we call this a pop technique. And it doesn't hurt the dog, and it shouldn't move the dog towards you. It's just basically to get their attention. So if I was to pop a couple times on the leash, basically I'm tugging on the leash, basically I would do that until he would turn and pay attention to me. And again, I would need to keep this same good timing. So before I begin practicing this with my dog, I would have my leash gathered up. I would have several treats ready and waiting so that I can reward him if he's a good boy. If he's at a distance and he does it successfully, I would keep the leash loose and I would test him. Ken, he wasn't listening. You were supposed to be a good dog.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you were still working on the thing.
So he was not a good dog. So now I'm going to have to use my dog training on him. So if he didn't respond, I would then say, Ken, yay, good boy. And then we would take off and run and we would have a lot of fun from there. Again, my timing was name, then adding my pulses from there to make sure that that he's getting good information with good timing. I don't know if I don't know if you've already said that dogs learn within 1 second. So if you're giving your dog information with long gaps in between them, it's very difficult for the dogs, to connect. All right.
Perfect. Sit back over. So we did talk a lot about technique in that part of the show. This is something that you're going to have to take. Maybe you go from the dog training class to you can take your dog home or whatever, and then you practice it later in the day in your backyard. Maybe this is something that you work on. And what's great about the response to names, you can literally practice it just about anywhere. Mm-hmm. Maybe you go to your pet store and you practice the moment you get out of your car. You get your dog out of the car. You can do this. Maybe then once you've had some success there, maybe now your dog's ready for inside.
This is our distraction box.
Right. So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about is this can be a great way to provide some challenge to whatever the skill is, whether it's your response to name, walking on leash, your stay, or your recall. When we go with a stationary object, so this is how you can. Did you want to show that? Did you want to show that one?
I can use that for walking on leash.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good idea. But with a stationary object, lying dead, so to speak, not moving on the floor, you control everything. You're putting your dog in a situation where you're prepared for if they make a mistake. You're also able to sort of go closer or farther away, depending on how successful they are. Hi, cutie pie.
Come here.
Is she gonna hop up? Oh my goodness, what a jump! She almost jumped over two people. Jump in the Shark Tank. Okay, so let's see. If you have a question about this exercise, specifically with response to name or proofing in general, now would be the time to drop it into the chat. Now let's just see. I've got a couple of good things. I like this painted springs system, talking about he or she was using the startle response and added more distractions. And that was, I had asked, how are you making this more challenging for your dog? That's the question of the week. Cool. I like Patricia's statement. The key to training boxers is a sense of humor. Now,
and some patience.
And some patience, for sure. Now, there are some dogs, and whether it's breed specific or dog specific, that aren't as motivated to work hard for you. And that's something when we talk about leadership, that's how you unlock that for your dog.
Train some dogs to have to
to make them put in a little bit more effort. And maybe that's, and oftentimes when someone says, I'm so frustrated, my dog, it's just not going well.
My dog's so stubborn.
Right, yeah. Then I really want you to think about what is the motivator? What information is your dog getting from you? And how can I make it so that I am the center of everything good? Because that's really going to allow you to take that training more places. Let's see I've got to go back here. Let's talk a little bit. I think walking on leash would be a good one to jump into right now. When we talk about proofing. So we talked about the three elements that you can use to proof through exercises: distance, distraction, and duration. Those three things are the adjustments you're going to make, and only one at a time. If I'm introducing my dog to a new challenge, let's say the stay is a simple to explain one, and they're doing a really nice job with me in close, I'm not going to walk 10 feet away and bounce a tennis ball. I'm going to maybe walk a few feet away at first, a couple big steps away, adding distance, and then I'd return to the dog. And then maybe in nice and close, I'll add a leash wiggle or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's important too, because I see a lot of people, they will make a distraction and then the dog doesn't break, so then they do another distraction and then the dog holds and then they do another distraction, and they forget about the importance of rewarding the dog after each distraction, because we want to stay in the teaching phase. We want to make sure the dog gets positive reinforcement for making such an excellent choice. I often have to tell people, try not to distract your dog until they make a mistake. We want to be proactive and we want to be rewarding our dog before we make things more difficult on them. So the dog says, I like staying here. I get lots of reinforcement for this, and the information is clear.
A couple of things come on here. I just want to see what's appropriate, because at 8:15, so in about 15 minutes, we'll go to some more general questions. I see their general questions coming on here. But okay, walking on leash. Now, I actually have something to show you guys when we're talking about walking on leash. Now, this is a common challenge for people when they're teaching their dog to walk on a loose leash. We've published a couple of really helpful videos to really give you guys a little bit more a deeper understanding of how to teach your dog to respect that leash and to really think about not pulling a leash. But we've also published a couple of videos about specifically walking in at your left-hand side. Now, when we're talking about walking on leash, we have, we're talking about in a formal position, that they're remaining in at your side, because you have so much more control. Now, no, we're not going to go on like a 2 kilometer or how long would that be in miles? It would be like a, I don't know, 1.6, 1.2 mile walk. I don't know what it is. In that formal walking position. But if you're in a busy environment, then, or you're walking down a sidewalk where there's like traffic, that's when you're going to insist on that walking in at your side. To get there, you need to do lots and lots of proofing, because you never really know when some of these strange distractions are going to pop up. Mm-hmm. So I created a graphic to help you guys. Now, this is when your dog has the foundation, you need to increase the challenge a little bit. In walking on leash, it's so easy to do that. You start with stationary distractions. That's a great way to do it. You put a toy on the floor. In our classes, we might put, some interesting smelling things on the floor and walk the students through it.
Food in containers with little holes on the top is a good one if your dog's food motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most important part is how to temper. That's the word I want to keep using, but I'm not sure if that's the right word. Temper, slowly add and take away challenge, whatever. That's the word I'm thinking. You need to increase or decrease the challenge slowly. So I created this graphic that you guys might find helpful. So I'm going to just take this down for a sec. So when we're talking about walking on leash training, there's an area that your dog will not be distracted at all. That you're maybe 20 feet away from that thing. Your dog just couldn't care less. There's an area within 5 feet where you're absolutely going to fail. Your dog will not function. They will be so distracted. But there's a threshold area where the magic, and this is what I say, where the magic happens. This is where you're going to really do some changing, really do some teaching. And that's the area that you need to be working in. You need to be rewarding your dog in. You need to be sort of going in and out of that warm zone, that yellow zone, and rewarding your dog for choosing to remain with you. I don't know what you have to add to that for walking on leash training.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Sometimes the will definitely pull might be a certain distraction, or it could be a certain location as well. So you could be maybe strategic about where you're practicing at first. We often suggest making sure that you're training things in a calmer environment, and then bringing distractions into those environments first before changing where you go, because it's just a little bit easier to control things. Another thing that you may think about specifically for walking is making sure that when you go for a walk with your dog, you get there is opportunities for you to move further away from a distraction. So if you're like walking your dog on a trail and you have to constantly bypass people because you can't, walk around or get away, that might not be an ideal situation to be doing training in. I would maybe go there when I could test my behavior. If I'm walking my dog on the street and I see a distraction, until my dog is reliable at walking on a loose leash and being under control with me as I go by that distraction, I might turn to go the other direction. I might cross the street and give my dog a bit more space so she can see the distraction over there, but I have much more luck getting more focus because the distraction's not like on top of me and I'm not battling it. I said this a few weeks ago. It was sort of accidental, but it's turned out to be great. Is you need to think of distractions as like being like a magnet to your dog. The closer you are to a distraction, the more it's going to suck them towards it, and you're not going to have any any luck. You know, if the further away you are from the magnet,
it's too hard.
Yeah, it's you know, it's not as powerful, it's not as strong. You'll have more luck getting a little bit better attention.
Yeah, that's a great point. I see some good questions coming in here. So if you have thoughts, questions about proofing, right now we're talking about walking on leash. We will talk about stay in the recall. But if you have questions on those topics, make sure you drop them into the chat. Now, there's a couple of really important things here.
I can even address this treat thing
Yep.
with the walking.
Okay,
that's sort of a proofing thing.
Yep. Robert Crackle says, any advice about weaning off of treats, or do I have to use treats to reward in my pocket forever? And this is a common misconception, I guess. And it's certainly something that people have mentioned a lot on a couple of our videos, where they don't understand, they're not seeing big picture. And so I want you to really think about, Kayl's going to talk a little bit about some strategy and techniques, because everything we do is to train away from food so that your dog's listening to your voice or your body position. It has everything to do with the food at the beginning, but over time, the dog starts to be rewarded and be listening to you for you. But with that said, just an opportunity for me to toot and head on over to the train station.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about teaching the dogs to walk on leash. So once my foundation exercises are done, and again, if you're not sure what those are, we can make sure we post a video on how we actually teach it. But once my dog has an idea of how to walk at my side with a lot of help. So what I mean by that is when we teach it, the food's on the nose, and I would be sort of rewarding every couple of steps. The food is a huge aid here. Now you'll see, here, miss, right here. B, hey, hey. Leave that, here. The food is doing a lot of the work, but my leash is loose. We want to be careful that when we're practicing, we're not pulling the dog around. The leash is going to stay loose. Now, once my dog can understand that, here, babe, come sit here for a sec. Get back. Hey, be quiet. When my dog understands that, the next thing that I'm going to do is, rather than having the food on her nose, I'm going to go from having the food on her nose to up at my waist. Now, when you make this change, some of the dogs will start jumping up for the food. So it's important that you're good at the word yes. You're good at using the word yes. So I need to make sure that I yes her when she's in position at my side. So my food will be away from her nose. I would tell her, let's go. Yes. Let's go. Yes. Let's go. Yes. And I'm trying to yes and reward specifically. Let's go. Good girl. Yes. And then reward from there. Now, that's usually a fairly easy transition because I still have food in my hand. And then when we get to the point where the food's in the pocket or in your bait pouch, that's when it becomes a little bit more challenging. So this time, I'm going to leave my food in my pocket. I'm going to walk with my hand out of my pocket. A lot of people think that this counts. But that's like me, walking around with my hand in my wallet. I could basically ask somebody to do whatever I wanted because it looks like I'm about to pay off. So my hand's going to stay out of my pocket, and I'm going to tell her, let's go, let's go, let's go, good, let's go, good, let's go, yes, good. So I have focus. I'm going to yes her, let's go, good, let's go, yes, good, let's go, yes, let's go. Yes, good girl. So you'll notice when I'm using the word yes there, I'm yesing her when she's at my side, and I was also choosing to reward her when she was looking at me. So that's how I can start to wean off of the food. The other thing that I could do is put the food somewhere where I could come and get it. So maybe...
So now this is good. So
here.
Karen GSD Lover says that her dog won't take food when she's teaching walking on leash training. Doesn't matter where she is. So this might be an option for her. If she does jackpot rewarding, going to a tug toy, whether it's food or not.
Yeah, you don't have to use food, but you also need to consider why is your dog not taking food? Is it not motivated by food? Is it overweight and doesn't want food? What type of food are you using? Is it motivating enough? Are you training in an area where the distraction is overpowering the food that you have? So there's lots of things to consider, but you can work a little bit on this jackpot technique, and you can use food or a tug toy. I could even show you with the tug toys because I just showed you food. Bee loves toys, so get out of the toy box, my love. I'm going to put the toy here. So now we're working a bit of a distraction. Leave it. Get in. Get in. Good. And I'm going to walk her all around here. And when I see something that she likes, I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to run over and grab this toy and have a little play with her. So leave that. Good girl. Let's go. Good girl. Let's go. That's it. Let's go. Good. Yes, that was nice. Get it. Yay! And then I can have a little play with her. Get that thing. Good girl. It's much more fun to practice this when there's more room to move around. But I'll try it again. Get out. Good girl. Leave it. Good. Leave it. Good. Get in. Sit. Good girl. Ready? Let's go. Yes, let's go. Let's go. Good. Let's go. Get back here. Let's go. Good. Let's go. Yes, good girl. So I waited for a moment where her leash was loose and she was looking at me. I said yes to let her know that she was right, and then we can take off and have a little play. If you wanted to use food, I might just take off to where a little stash of her treats were, and I could give her a reward. And that's a great way to practice. Good girl. Okay, out. Yeah, sit.
All right. There's
Good
some
girl.
really great questions. I don't know if you had more that you wanted to
No, I think that's lots.
Questions over here.
Good.
Okay, let's head back. Okay, and we're back. I just thought you guys would want to see the fun intro video. Now, this is a great question that I saw, and I thought we can definitely talk about this. So Mary says, did she give a treat for every yes, or is just using yes to treat some of the times to encourage the dog? Let's talk a little bit. I love that she saw that.
Yeah, that's super observant of you.
Very observant.
So at this point in my training with this particular dog, I no longer have to feed her every single time I say yes. She's 3 years old and she's had a ton of training. So she has had hundreds and hundreds of repetitions of hearing the word yes and then getting a reward. So what happens is when I say yes to her, she feels internally wonderful. She thinks that's great. However, when you're working with a newer dog that has less experience and you're just starting out, we highly advise that every single time you say yes, you also pay off, because you need to teach your dog how valuable that word yes is. Now, the word yes in our training, it's not praise. It is specifically a marker word that happens in the exact moment in time. Somebody explained it the other day when we were teaching as like a timestamp. So at that exact moment, that is exactly what we're rewarding. So as I was walking, I was being very specific when I said the word yes. I was looking at my dog. I was looking at where she was looking. I was looking at my leash. I was looking at where she was in relationship to me. And when I saw the perfect picture, that's when I said yes and I rewarded her. And then I could use praise. I could say, good girl, good, let's go, whatever it might be. Praise is wonderful to use in dog training. Dogs really love it. But you're not going to just give out free yeses for no reason.
Right.
Yes needs to be something that you really find really worthwhile.
Yeah, it's really important.
Okay,
let's go to the queue. That was, guess we talked a little about that.
Coming all the way up, are we?
That's good. So, we talk a little bit about jackpot rewarding, and you can use jackpot rewarding in a lot of different ways. You saw Kayl just do some jackpot rewarding, but there's some other ways to jackpot reward your dog that may not be food. It may not even be a toy. We have one of our trainers, actually the director of online training, who she has a toller, and his absolute favorite thing is to go splash in water. Like he just is over the moon excited about it. So sometimes, because we like to change up our rewards, now and again, you want to keep the dog really wondering what's going on, really, keep them interested in what you're doing. So sometimes she will do, maybe whatever the thing is. Let's say it's walking on leash, and she'll be marking that moment. Yes, good boy, way to go. And then she'll give him that release word. Okay, it's so important to break off that, okay, now you're not working anymore. That gives your dog an opportunity to not be on the clock, and she'll say, okay, go for a swim. And she'll send the dog off. So that was a really unique way to approach,
I've done a lot of that with Hippie Shake, with chasing the hose.
Right.
She loves to chase the hose. She's just more motivated than any treat I could possibly give her. So I would use that as, a form of reward for a recall. She'd be in the backyard, she'd sniff, she'd be doing her own thing, and I would call her. She would turn, and when she came to me, I would spray the hose on the ground for a couple seconds, and she just thought that was the best party. And it got to the point where she would just stand and stare at me. She didn't want to go sniff anymore because she was like, woo, you're fun. We party when we're together.
Yeah. So Nancy's got a great question about, I think this was walking on leash, and we do need to move on here shortly, but I wanted to talk about Nancy's question. Now, she said that her dog, I believe it's a German Shepherd, if I remember correctly. I can't find that. wherever it was, it's not that important, I guess. She's another dog no matter how far away. She said, still struggling with the puppy. It's reactive to walking on leash, forgets food, me, and everything. And then Nancy mentions that as soon as she sees another dog, no matter how far away. So this is really, really good. And I don't want to, if you want to talk to like how you can get a little bit more control before introducing some of those things, it's not just about the dogs. Like you need to be practicing some other exercises where maybe you have some more control.
If this is the case, there's other things that are going on with your dog. This isn't specific to walking. This is specific to leadership. This is specific to attention. This is to the dog not feeling that you're valuable enough to choose over other dogs. So it's really important that you've taken some time to really establish a high rate of reward for the dog watching you, for the dog choosing you, for the dog being at your side. So that's really valuable. I can show another little thing actually here.
You know what? Just gives me another chance to toot.
Okay.
I'm pumped about that. Oh, hang on one second. Just got to get this set up. Last time
I can even do a double dog here.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Come here. Okay.
Okay, I think that's it. Time to head on over to the train station.
Good. Okay. So what I can do here is I have some food, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to really don't jump on me. I'm going to really work on teach my dog that moving to my left-hand side is really important. So I'm just going to take some treats in my left hand, and I'm just going to lure her to my side. Okay. Yes, and then I'm going to reward. Okay. Good. I'm going to lure her to my side. Yes, going to release. Now hippie shake's turn. Lure her to my side. Yes. Good. Okay. Beline's turn. Lure her to my side. Good. Now this is actually really cool if you have more than one dog to train, because my dogs are understanding to work for me when another dog is here as a distraction. Hippie shake's turn. In my side. Good. Yes. Now we teach this as a get in command, and why we do this is it builds a lot of value for coming to my left. Now look what's happening is I have two dogs that say pick me, pick me. Beline's turn. Get in. Yes. Good. Hippie. Good. Yes. Well, do we see that? Good. Now I have two dogs, yes, that say, this whole left side business, good, is quite lovely. Excellent. Look at you. Good. Okay. Now again, I never forced them there. All I did is make sure that the highest form of reward happened when they were moving to my left-hand side. They never got a treat anywhere else in this location. I'm just reinforcing them for focusing on me and moving to my side. Now, when I begin this, I would be practicing in a calm environment, and if I had a dog that had any less training than the two dogs that I'm working here, I would have them on a leash. I would ensure that they couldn't just wander away and decide not to pay attention to me anymore. I also would use really high value food, so I would lure them to my side. Again, I'm not pulling them, I'm just keeping it loose and making this a very valuable thing. Because what happens is when I've done, here hip, when I've done, you want this? When I've done a lot of repetitions, hippie, of moving to my side for a reward, she now says this is a really valuable place to be, so that if I'm out with a distraction and I tell her get in, she says, oh my gosh, that get in, that's a really fun exercise, good things happen. I have a much higher chance of having her connect with me. But if I haven't done the groundwork of building a foundation of the dog thinking that a behavior is really reliable, this is not just for this exercise I'm talking about, this is for everything. If you don't make the sit. If you don't make the behavior valuable enough, and then you are faced with the distraction, you're setting yourself up for failure. So you got to do the foundation work first.
The other thing maybe you can mention really quickly is timing. So Nancy mentioned that she's got a Boston Terrier.
Sit.
I think that's what she said. Boston Terrier. Yeah, and about preceding the dog making that choice, like being ahead of rewarding him before that.
That's a really good point. So another thing that's very difficult is sometimes when dogs are distracted, they react just so darn quickly that we end up losing the moment, and then the dog ends up locking onto a distraction, and it's very difficult for us to pull them off. So it's important that you learn to read your dog. One of the best ways to read your dog and what they're thinking is where they're looking. So right now, these two dogs are thinking about this toy because they're sitting and staring at me. But if I'm walking along and my dog looks at distraction and then their body changes, maybe they tense up, maybe they start to stare and they get excited, that's the point where I would start to say, hey, pay attention to me. And then I would redirect them. I would move them. I would ask for a new behavior. I might put my hand on the leash and redirect them, or get some food out and redirect them that way. But I would do it before my dog looks, decides to go, and then goes. I need to react at the first moment of disconnection from my dog. Not that your dog needs to walk with you and stare at you, the entire time. That's not what we're saying. But we need to make sure that the dog at least seems like they are going to choose you as their number one in that moment. And you can tell that by how they check in. When I take my dogs for a walk, they absolutely don't stare at me the entire time. But I would say like every couple of seconds, they do one of these. Just sort of check in, check in to see that I'm there. Their leashes are loose. Then they do a little bit of sniffing, and then they just kind of check back. Hey, Mom, you still there? And they're aware of me. And that's all I'm asking for in that moment, until maybe I get around some more difficult distractions. And then I might say, okay, get in. Good girl. And then I might work more controlled walking or more controlled focus, and then let things be a bit more relaxed again. Sit.
Yeah, great.
Good, wait.
Okay, you can have, you got a couple questions, and we'll jump into stay maybe.
Okay.
Kayla's in here just dropping some knowledge here in the train station. Now, we need to zoom along. In the last couple of train stations, we've went into overtime. We've been like 2 and a bit hours. Like, it's been crazy, but we want to
Kale didn't
make
have
the most.
dinner. So
yeah, no, well, neither did
don't know
I.
about-
Maybe we'll go to a movie tonight after the show. One thing I've
Whatever
loved.
you want, my love.
All right, okay. I'd be excited to go to a movie. Kale's been
actually
working.
not sure if I can,
something that I should mention is that Kale's been working on her TEDx speech. So Kale's asked to do a TED talk at McMaster University, which is our medical teaching hospital nearby.
A week tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a week tomorrow.
It's crunch time.
Kale's been really focused on that. And actually, someone mentioned the word I was looking for was titrate, and that's what made me think of the medical training hospital. Yeah, but that makes me think of giving patients medication. But regardless, beside the point. So let's talk about stays. So the stay is the same process. I want you to think about teaching the foundation. We've talked a lot about how to teach your dog to stay. Actually, in how long ago? I guess last week, we showed you a video about how to teach your dogs to stay in 5-minute training sessions so that you can literally incorporate it into your everyday life. Super helpful. I've had lots of people that said, we need more of these because I really want to, be able to do this more often. I'd love short training sessions on different skills. But
thanks for all the support, guys. That's so nice.
It is really nice. It's very cool.
Yeah, they are YouTubing the TED Talk, so you'll be able to watch it later. And Ken and I haven't really talked about this, but we might try to do some taping or live streaming of our own. Yeah. We just need to make sure that that's something that is appropriate for it. But thank you. That's really nice of you guys.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they'd feel. I know
hopefully I don't screw up.
The TED channel. Oh, you'll do great. I know you will. The TED channels, I would imagine, is pretty careful about what they allow to go out before, but we'll see.
You will be able to see it later, as long as I was strictly told that I'm not allowed to go beyond 18 minutes. If I go beyond 18 minutes, they won't post it to the YouTube channel.
Right.
So I need to learn how to zip it.
Yeah. Zip and rip it. Okay, so the stay, when we're talking about those 3Ds, so when you're taking your new skill with your dog into the real world, it's proofing. Now, the 3 challenges that you're going to increase with your dog over time: distance, distraction, and duration. And then oftentimes with the stay, for example, the distraction, adding like other distractions is the easiest thing for you. Now, I wanted to sort of breeze over this one because we have a couple of videos specifically about the stay. I will say right now that the stay is one of the biggest leadership exercises that you can do. It's one of the least. We do
it with every single puppy.
It's huge. It's one of the least functional things that you do with your dog, but when you need it, boy, oh boy, do you need this skill. And to watch someone... Incredible
for self-control for the dogs.
To watch someone work with their dog who maybe they're struggling a little bit, to watch them as a dog trainer, watching a student work through some of these things, as they progress, when they start to really figure out their stay, the sit stay and the down stay, overall, you start to see a dramatic improvement. And I can say this, with the stay being the variable, because there are some people who, never really get the hang of the stay. They have bad timing. They're giving their dog bad information, regardless of how many, suggestions you give them, but they still continue to struggle. And those dogs continue to struggle. But if you add that stay in, or if they, from one week to the next, all of a sudden they've been really working hard on their stay, overall training, it makes a huge difference. Yeah. So think about how the benefits of your stay, even though it's not functional. But what we'll do... We do have a functional one called wait. Yeah.
Which so some people might say, like, I think stay is pretty functional, but a lot of people use stay a little bit differently than we do, which causes a little bit more opportunity for the dog to be not as reliable.
Right.
So we have a stay and we also have a wait, which are very similar, but they have two different criterias.
Yep. I like Dan's comment. So tonight we were working on our stay during feeding dinner, playing with words like octopus, Oklahoma, okie dokie, to really nail down that attention.
Awesome.
So I think you can talk just for a minute about how what Dan's talking about.
Yeah. So in our training, we teach our dogs to do a behavior until we release them from that behavior. So, for example, when we say stay or wait or whatever, sit down, we would then release the dog out of that position with some type of release command. And the command we generally use is the word okay, which means the dog is allowed to get up. And so sometimes, to make sure that the dog is truly listening and not just anticipating, we will make it really difficult by like saying like Oklahoma or something like that, and see if the dog like pays attention. So Dan's dog is training at our grade 4 level right now, and she was actually in class today with Dan's wife, and we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff to test the dogs. Really tons and tons of proofings. The dogs all know the behaviors. Now it's, do they know it inside out and backwards?
We talked about, I just saw the free workshop thing pop up and I thought I should add that. So this month in the mystery box workshop, it's not that much of a mystery if I tell you, but I want you, this is the stuff. These are the things that I want you to be working on at home with your dog. How many times have you thought to yourself, wouldn't it be great if I could just ask my dog to go lie down while I fill out this paperwork, while I work on the computer during dinner, someone rings the doorbell. You know, you don't want to always have to go take your dog to their crate. Just ask them to go lie on their bed. If you click that link for the free workshop, that's what we're working on. You'll see Instructor Shannon, our Director of Online Training. She'll give you 3 full days of training on the bed stay. It's super helpful. I was so excited when I edited that video because I knew how useful it would be.
Yeah,
especially
and the
for this
dogs
audience.
take to it so quickly.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly useful. We have like dog beds in almost every one of our rooms in our house, which probably not surprising being 2 dog trainers, but it's so fabulous to utilize a place where your dog will go and chill out and have an off button, so that you don't have to use your crate all the time. We also have crates in lots of locations in our home as well.
Yep.
But for our older dogs that have some training, we just use the beds as an opportunity to control them in situations where we need it.
Janelle Meager mentions in guide dog training, we use the word break.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a pretty common one that we'll use as well if we want an
Break, or some
alternative
people will
for
say
okay.
release. It doesn't really matter what you say. Break's a great word to say too. It's just something, it's important to teach your dog to do a behavior until you release them. So it's not that the dog is just doing it until they feel like stopping. It's you're the one who starts the exercise, and then you're the one who finishes the exercise. It's a really great way to establish leadership over your dog, but in a very non-confrontational way.
Talking about the stay, we've talked a little bit about distraction. Now, the thing that we need to talk about really briefly is distance. So when you're starting to get reliable stays with adding distraction, maybe it's time to add a little bit of distance. But you still need to maintain great dog training timing.
Yeah.
This is the challenge people find challenging. And how do we ensure good training timing when we're adding distance to our stays?
So when we are starting to build distance, so we would start just standing like literally in front of the dog, like toe to toe, so that it's very difficult for them to make a mistake. And we do that because if the dog breaks the stay, we can fix them within 1 second. So we would literally place the dog back into the sitting position within 1 second of them getting up, using one hand on the leash and the other hand on their bum. And we just sort of guide them into the sitting position to remind them that they shouldn't get up. When we start to build distance, though, it's very difficult to get that placement in when you're standing 6 or 7 feet away. So to ensure that we have good timing, we introduce then a verbal reprimand or a verbal marker that indicates to the dog that they're making an error. And we might use a sound like ah, or hey, or oops, or something that we do the moment the dog breaks position. Then that buys us the time that it takes to go from wherever we are all the way back to the dog. And then we would follow through with our placement once again at that time.
I just thought of a great way for these guys to think about their training timing.
Okay.
So if I want you at home, I'm going to toss this whistle in the air. And it's so important that you're marking the moment that your dog's making a mistake, that you need to have great timing. No, it should be okay.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss this whistle in the air. When it reaches the height, hopefully I can keep it in camera the whole time. It's hard for me to see, but. So when it reaches the highest point that it's going to be on camera, I want you to think, or even say maybe at home, or hey. I want you to mark that moment with your voice. This is going to really reinforce for your dog. So for example, when a dog gets up out of a sit stage, they'll dip their head. That's the moment you need to say or hey. You need to mark that moment. So I want you to, this is a practice thing for you guys at home. So when the thing...
I'll do it a couple times so you can see what it looks like.
Yeah, and this might be more challenging because there's not a lot of room. Normally, this would be a great demo and like a full... thing. You know what? Let's go to camera 2. Also, gives me a reason to use this thing. Okay. So maybe I can show this with Kayl as the demo. Can you guys see this okay? Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
So at home, I want you guys to be really thinking about the height. When it's at its highest point, I want you to say or oops or think it in your head. Are you ready? Here we go.
Hey. 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 Hey.
Perfect. So that's a great way that you can practice your timing. Think about your timing at home so that you are really focused.
I felt like I was going to break out in song there.
Yeah. Hey. Goes on and on. But I always find that when I explain that to someone or we try that, it's really helpful because the timing is so precise. It's just that as precise when you're marking the moment that your dog makes a mistake. Mm-hmm. So really think about that. Yeah. Robert, okay, I like this. So Robert says, can you use more than one marker word? I find myself saying at, hey, and sht. Yeah, absolutely. You can use more than one marker word. What you're going to find though, Robert, and this is something that we've noticed, especially different dogs will have different responses to different words. Yep. Now, what you need to do is have a rather acute word. I don't like the, Cesar Millan. Yeah, that's his name. Cesar Millan, he's a very popular dog trainer. You probably heard. His name. I know. It just sort of escaped me for a minute. I don't know why. But
I think it's Cesar Millan.
Millan,
actually.
Right. Yeah. He has like a hissing sound. It goes like ch-ch-ch and that kind of thing. It's very, so we have students who come into classes quite often who are
sound like
making,
a bunch of snakes.
Yes. But it's not appropriate for their dogs. Now, it's something that he uses and he probably has great timing when he uses that language or that sound. But you need to do what's appropriate for your dog. So some dogs might need something really sharp. Some dogs might need something as oops. Just a soft sound. But that's something that you have to figure out. But it does need to be fairly short so that you can really capture that moment in time.
Yep, I agree. Okay,
let's talk really quickly about the recall. So some things that you can do to proof your recall. In our classes, we will often use, a distraction, a human distraction. Yep. Maybe you're working your recalls away from a person. We talk a lot about the foundations, recalling them from a restrained. You restrain your dog, get them really excited and focused on you, and then release them to you and reward them once they get there. Mm-hmm. But you need to make it a little bit more challenging at some point. You need to do, some sort of distraction when we talk about using those the leash to get your dog's attention. Same kind of thing with the recall. But one of the greatest challenges when you're proofing your recall are distractions along the way and distractions at the ending, because that sit at the end is just as important as getting them to turn off the distraction. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what we might do to proof a recall in real life.
Typically when we would start with no distractions. Then we would start with having the dog being called away from the distractions. And then we would usually keep that as a constant because that's a very natural life skill. But then what we would do is start to add other distractions in very specific placements. So one of them would be placing placing distractions behind the handler so that as the dog's running towards them, they see their handler and then they also see distractions behind. And this forces the dog to have to make a decision. Do I stop at my handler or do I ignore my handler and just go by and grab all the distractions on the floor? And then we would work through that if the dog made those errors by having a leash attached to the dog and following through those pops that I showed you earlier on the live stream. And then from there, we would take the distraction and we would put it between the owner and the handler. So now, in order for the dog, sorry, I meant to say the owner and the dog. So now the dog would have to leave a distraction, bypass a distraction to get to the human, and then they would have to leave the distraction that could be behind them. And then we would decide how difficult to make the distraction, how close to put it to the dog, and we would just tailor all of those variables until we found something that was achievable. I mean, it's very close to that. You should throw up that thing again, hun.
Oh, sorry.
It says to walking
walking on leash.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily to will definitely pull. You could say will definitely not come or will definitely run away.
Yep.
So you want to practice in that threshold area where there are distractions that test your dog's ability to listen, but they're not necessarily going to force your dog to make poor choices every single time. And that's what we mean about being smart about proofing with your skills.
Yeah. Patricia, I like this. She says, I used to say at, and then I found my 5-year-old would get really stressed from it. So now we have a higher pitch. Mm-hmm. And that's good of you to recognize that, because some people might, be using really sharp, hard sounding, acute noise, and the dog may be getting up out of their sit. Really pay attention to why is that dog getting out of their sit. They may start to really cower and worry and move away. So this is why we say, you need to be aware of your dog, their limitations. You need to be responsive with them, that you're giving them the best information possible. Mm-hmm. But you need to look at the big picture, whether it's your dog's not listening without food or your dog's, not having reliable stationary skills. All super important stuff. Grab a couple more questions. We're in overtime. We're 9 minutes into overtime here, and I'm having fun. Lots of great questions on here. Make sure you drop your question in the chat if you have something that you're working on. Melissa says, Finn, my 8-month-old SDIT blew me away in November. He's attending service dog and training. Blew me away in November. He's attending a fundraising event at our organization at Wren's in Halifax. He lasted the full 4 hours, and I credit a ton of that to you guys and the distraction duration and distance. Yeah. Cool. Super helpful.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Really good for a young dog.
Patricia said, I also use stay because my family ruined the stay. I also use wait because my family ruined the stay command. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. You can always retrain a skill on a new word. The nice part about doing that or having to going through it again is your dog already physically knows what the expectation is. It's when you're teaching a sit, you need to show your dog how to sit first before you train the word. If they already know how to sit, Kayl often shows on lesson 1 or in some of our videos how she helps Funky to lie down on the word banana or some new word. Every time she does it, it's different. But with that dog having the same muscle memory, guiding them into that position is really easy. Now you just need to pair that new word with that skill.
I think it's also important to know, though, that dogs will respond to behaviors given by different people. So,
right.
Even though the stay command might not work for some of your family members, if you're consistent with it, the dog will stay for you. We see all kinds of dogs learn that certain people in the house aren't going to follow rules and they're not going to follow through. And so the dog learns that they don't have to listen to them. But then there's other people in the household that do follow through. They have high expectations. They expect the dog to listen. They don't let the dog get away with stuff. And the dog listens perfectly to those behaviors. I see it in our own dogs sometimes. Our dogs listen to Ken and I very well. But, if I'm around my friends' kids or whatever and they say sit, my dogs will literally look at the kid and then look at me and be like, do I have to listen to this little kid? And
checking in.
Yeah. So, and it's not because she doesn't know sit or the command's ruined. Right. It's that the dog has said, I don't really think I need to respect this particular person. So keep in mind, you can do a lot of good training on your own. It is so nice if the family is involved and on board and consistent, but we know that's not always the case.
Yeah. Catherine Campbell, great question. What should I do when my dog gives into the distraction when training? Should I backtrack and reduce the distraction? Yeah, we talked a little bit about that in some of the walking on leash training, but let's talk about it for the stay because that's the clearest one. Why don't we, maybe we can even show it. You want to show it?
No, I think I can just say it. Okay. I think that when the dog is breaking a stay distraction, you should definitely backtrack and maybe go to a more mild distraction. You could, for example, try like tapping your hands instead of like full on clapping, or reduce the distance. Our sort of golden rule is that we only let the dog make 2 mistakes before we change one of those elements to allow the dog to have success, so we can get a few rewards in before making it more challenging. In terms of other exercises that might be more mobile, like the recall or the walking, it's important that you do have a leash on, so that if the distraction is too overwhelming and the dog's making a poor choice, that you're not allowing the dog to be in a situation where they can self-reward by getting to chase after something instead of coming, or drag you over to another dog, and now they've just been reinforced for pulling on the leash for 10 or 15 feet. So you just have to be smart about it that way.
For sure. Now, we have talked a lot about proofing, and I will tell you, without question, your dog training, all of the effort that you're putting in won't work unless you do some of these proofing exercises with your dog. So really think about that when you're teaching your dog a new skill. You do need to take that show on the road a little bit and see some success. Now, I wanted to put in to the... I was so excited when instructor Shannon created this workshop. I wanted to have you guys get another chance to join our free mystery box workshop this month. It is the bed stay. This is something that people have really had a really nice response. Whether it's our online training students or people just that are in the workshop group. So make sure you check that out. It's such a valuable skill. And I wanted to say a big thank you to Dan the Man Luton, SD Cruiser, but Dan especially for all of the hard work he's doing in the chat. He is, these streams are a lot more fun because of him, because we don't have to focus as much about dropping extra video links for you guys. It's super, super helpful. Now, I need to say, if this is your first time here with us, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We publish new videos every week to help you to have a well-behaved four-legged family member. I think that's it. I think we're going to shut it down.
Good one.
Maybe it was a great one. Drop us, if you're watching this in the replay, drop us some comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know what kinds of things you want us to be doing in our live streams. Now, next week is our After Hours Agility on the McCann Dogs Agility channel. I've placed a link in the card above. Yeah, next Tuesday. I'm working fire the other days. So I
have to think of a topic.
I placed a link for the McCann Dogs Agility channel. If you aren't subscribed there yet, make sure you come check us out. That'll be at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We'll be having lots of fun doing some agility stuff, and you guys will enjoy it. On that note, I want to thank you guys for joining. I'm Ken.
I'm Kayl.
Happy training. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.
See you.